Mr. Younis, what I see so tangible across the media and across the headlines of the newspapers is there's a raging battle about get back to work, et cetera, et cetera. And the polling and the tone is people really want to stay in lockdown until it's safe. What does Gallup perceive?
Absolutely. We ask that specific question, and I'll jump to that right now. When we ask Americans if all restrictions were removed from local and federal government, would you go back to your normal activities right now? Today, 21% of Americans say that they'd be ready to go right away. 36% say that they're going to wait for a number of new cases in their state to decline significantly. 31% say after there are no new cases in their state. And 12% say they're actually going to wait until after a vaccine is developed. There hasn't been a lot of movement on those items. There's been an 8% increase in the people who say that they're ready to go back to work or back to normal life right now. We've seen a very interesting partisan divide on that question. 44% of Republicans say they're actually ready to go back right now compared to sort of half of that of the national average. And Republicans have gone up 19 points when it comes to that question. So people are obviously itching to go back, but many are still going to wait and kind of see how this unfolds.
Yeah. Mohamed, if you were to have a collective cup of coffee this morning with Vice President Biden and with the President of the United States, what would you tell them the good politicians of all ilk get most wrong about the mood of America?
Oh, that's a phenomenal question. The number one thing I would tell them both is to be very wary of intruding into local decision making. When we ask Americans about how they approve the job being done in the various actors handling the current crisis, local actors have consistently fared much better than nationally elected officials. So 93% of Americans approve, for example, of the hospitals in their local area and how they're handling the crisis. Interestingly, to your viewers, Tom and Francine, 89% of Americans approve of how their employers have handled the crisis. 78% of Americans approve of how government health agencies have handled the crisis. When you go to the President of the United States, only 50% support how the President himself has handled the crisis. 48% approve of the way the Congress has handled the crisis. And the media, again, came in dead last at 41% of Americans approving of how they're handling the crisis. So my advice...
Right.
Go ahead.
Francine, who let this guy on? He just said the media's doing the worst job. Francine, who let Mohamed on this morning?
The media, but maybe not Bloomberg Surveillance. Mohamed, you know, as a foreigner living here in London, actually what's surprising is that it feels like this is partisan, right? It feels like depending on what spectrum politically you are, whether you support staying with the lockdown or not. Do you have any evidence of that, like in your data?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned, I mean, Republicans are certainly much more, twice as likely as the national average, if you will, to say that they're ready to go back to their normal activities right now. That being said, you know, it's still not a majority of Republicans that are sort of ready to go back right now. So Democrats are certainly most likely to not say that they're ready to go back right away. But I want to get back to the media point, Tom, because it is actually really key. In the 70s, when Nixon was being impeached, in America, 7 in 10 Americans said they had great confidence in the honesty of the media in their country. Today, that number is at 4 in 10. So this is really not new. It's a continuous decline, or really what has been now a persistent low approval that we've seen, particularly from Republicans, but on the national level even, of all the institutions we sort of asked about in the crisis, the media was actually the only institution that got a majority saying that they disapprove. So the media is a real big challenge. And of course, what's been happening on the media here in the U.S. has been extremely politicized. I know, Francine, you're in London, and Europe, the situation is a little bit different, but clearly this crisis has taken a very partisan turn now. I think that'll only increase. One of the interesting things to me in our poll is Dr. Fauci actually has a pretty strong approval from both Democrats and Republicans. And those actors who are clearly leading with medical expertise and not political interest are faring better and getting bipartisan approval from Americans. But of course, those who are partisan actors, such as the president or the Democrats, are, again, seeing 9 out of 10 of their base supporting them, but that's pretty much it when it comes to anyone else in the country. So as I think as this crisis takes a more partisan turn, it will be really critical to see how this impacts the election, of course. It's remarkable that we've kind of forgot that there is a presidential election in just a few short months here. And this, the economy is always the number one issue that Americans think about when they go to vote. It's always the economy and healthcare. And today, the economy and healthcare are all wrapped up into this thing called the COVID crisis and the meltdown. I just want to make one more point. When we asked Americans about their personal finance situation, and we've been doing this now for decades, what we saw this in April is the largest drop that we've seen since the Great Recession. So we had a 52% drop in Americans saying that the economy is going from getting better to getting worse. Our economic confidence index was actually at a 20-year high 2 months ago, and now is at a historic low.
Wow.